Welcome back. I'm Alfred Lambremont Weber, and today we have an extraordinary program coming to us from Thailand. Australian Dr. Maree Batchelor, MD, who's an extraordinary being. Our very good friend and colleague, Mary Rodwell, has a new book coming out at the beginning of 2017, A New Human. And Dr. Batchelor, who I've beginning to know, has her very own chapter in this book of The New Human. And she is a living example of the new human. And she will begin to share with us why that is so and how that is so and how that came unexpectedly to be so. And I think that this conversation is going to be a very, very interesting one for all of us and an expansive one. And will take us far into areas of healing, areas of expansion, areas of even dimensional shift. Welcome, Doctor. How should I call you? Should I call you Dr. Batchelor, Dr.?
No, just call me Maree.
Maree, okay.
Thank you.
Good. I want it to be,
Yeah. Thank you, Alfred. It's so beautiful to be on your program and so beautiful to connect with you. And thank you for that introduction. It's exciting to be able to meet with like-minded people and actually get a chance to express what I see as what's happening on the planet and to describe what has happened to me, to give people an understanding of what some of the things that are happening here on the planet and to people as we ascend.
Right, and you are, we've been sharing for some time prior to our program, and this is extraordinary because I understand a bit about the world that you've come from. For a time in the lower Rio Grande Valley of Texas, I oversaw, I was an administrator at a federally qualified community health center and oversaw 25 physicians, 120 nurses, 90,000 patient encounters a year, and even got a certificate from the Harvard School of Public Health. One of the only lawyers I was the only lawyer that was ever admitted to that course that was only for physicians who worked in community health centers. So I spent like 5 years among physicians. I was like a fish out of water, or I was like, who knows?
So, well, I feel like a fish out of water with them now. So, so that's all. That's. I understand. I understand your feelings.
However, you have been through an amazing awakening that took you from an idyllic 3D life with all the bells and whistles. And could you bring us into that life and just bring us through that whole story? Because
sure.
In a way, it's almost an archetype of the process that many who are in 3D humanity may be undergoing.
Sure.
Now, have undergone recently, may be undergoing over the next 5 to 10 years.
Sure. Well, I think there's no doubt that when we're transforming and ascending, our human existence needs to change dramatically. And whether we like it or not, that will come about by circumstances that present to us. So I agree with you that people will be going through this to some degree, maybe not as dramatic as mine, but certainly it is an uncomfortable time as we let go of the things that we have felt, you know, that have been so important to us in that 3D existence. And as we ascend, you recognize where you've actually been hooked into things that aren't necessarily serving you from the highest good for your connection to, you know, your higher self. But my journey really, well, you know, I graduated as a doctor. I was obviously, you know, a very good student, and you know, I think that's probably one of the ways I managed to fit in so beautifully into the world, into the 3D, is that I achieved academically. You know, I was academically successful, so there was my people pleasing right there. I got on, you know, in the world in the way that people perhaps, you know, would assess as a good achievement. And I ended up marrying a guy that I was at university with. He went on to become a surgeon. We ended up having 4 children, and I worked as a GP or a family doctor. He was building up his surgical practice. We had these 4 beautiful children. I lived in a very large home with a swimming pool and a tennis court, supported beautifully by my family, who I was one of 4. Each of my, you know, my brothers, 2 brothers and sister went on and got university degrees and were very successful as well. So I lived this idyllic, perfect 3D existence until June 2008, when my 4-year-old son, William, was tragically killed. We were walking on a beach, interestingly, a beach at the end of a road called Williams Road. And on Williams Road, on this quiet winter's day, I was with my whole extended family, and we walked up the path to where the road was. It was up a cliff, and he was surrounded by his uncles and aunties, and I was just a little bit further behind, walking up the stairs with my 2-year-old at the time. And a car driven by an underage 15-year-old who wasn't licensed was out of control, just in this completely quiet car park, came racing down into the car park and couldn't control the car and smashed into my 4-year-old son.
Oh, I'm sorry to hear that.
And at that time, he was pinned to a fence, and the 15-year-old driver couldn't even reverse the car. He had no idea how to even manage the car to even get it into reverse. So my brother pulled him out and jumped in the car and backed it off, and there lay my divine, beautiful 4-year-old son, who was still alive at the time. And we got an emergency helicopter, and he was airlifted to the Children's Hospital and went through many horrendous surgeries and actually didn't survive and died 11 days later. But what was interesting, even during that time, the grief, of course, was horrendous, and I didn't think that I would ever be able to get through it, and I could barely breathe, and I only functioned for my other 3 children. But what was interesting at that time is I kept getting messages that there was something else going on, that there was something about this that had a deeper meaning than what I could understand on a human level. And that's really when my awakening started. And at one point I went down to the site where he'd been hit by this car, and I was sitting there completely in grief, and all of a sudden a ball of light came out of the site where he was killed and immersed me. And I actually felt completely calm, completely peaceful, and got this message that all was okay. And, you know, I was sort of shocked by this. I had never been religious. I had never understood anything other than the 3D existence. And I really was wondering what was going on, but I drove off feeling completely peaceful. I then kept getting other messages about, you know, the way he'd been killed and how it had all been set up. And it was on Williams Road. And he had said to me, "Mum, I love you more than you." And he used to say this to me many times: "I love you more than you, Mummy." And it was only after his death that I realized the you he was talking about was the truth of who I am, that larger, that inner being, that self, that multidimensional being that's connected to, higher dimensions and so forth, that it was beyond the human. He was, saying, I love you more than the human you, and I'm here to wake you up to who you really are. So, I guess a number of people do go through awakening through tragedy and through grief and through loss, and this was certainly my doorway into awakening. I then researched it quite thoroughly because I was trying to understand what was going on, and yes, I was still experiencing deep, horrendous human grief, but I found some beautiful comfort in connecting with Eckhart Tolle's Power of Now and the New Earth. And I realized that what I was experiencing actually did have some merit and was understood by people around the world. There were few, but it was understood. And then I actually started following the mystic side of religions, and particularly got into the mystical side of the Hindu religion, and managed to really go through my grief feeling somewhat supported by those mystical teachings. And I started to feel an embodiment of frequencies then that were actually making me feel, helping me to heal. And I then ended up going back to work, doing sort of a spiritual type counselling and healing for my patients. And I was managing to help them navigate, their terrible suffering through some of the things that I'd learnt through my readings and teachings. And I really did explore the topic in depth, really as often as I could. I actually then went on to have another child. Interestingly, I had a little girl who was born. Her due date was the exact death date of my son, William. And I ended up having her a week early and called her Eleanor. And Eleanor, I didn't know at the time, means the light. And she really did bring light back into our family. It was beautiful. But I had lots of things were happening that just kept me feeling somehow connected to something bigger than what I had known before. And then it was in 2014 that I decided to go to a spiritual village in India. I took my 2 teenage children at the time and had an amazing experience in this little town called Ganeshpuri, which is just an hour or so out of Mumbai. And that's where a great being, Bhagwan Nityananda, is buried in the temple. Now, he was a great being that, performed miracles in his human capacity, well, as a human, but obviously with his spiritual connection. And I had an extraordinary experience in this temple where I was literally zapped on the head. Now, again, this isn't something that I had been familiar with. I had heard that these sorts of things did go on, but it actually happened to me. I was zapped on the head in a temple where a great being was buried. And it was from that moment on that I had an extraordinary transformation. It rapidly propelled me into greater awareness and greater expansion, to the point that really probably for a number of months I was living in more of a cosmic consciousness than in a human existence. And in fact, I came back to my family, my husband and other children, and no one could understand what was happening to me. And I was very quickly rejected from my family and from my family of origin, who would say that they did try to support me. And yes, they are a very loving group of people, but their support was in the way of, please just stop doing this and please come back to being the normal you. But of course, at this point, it was impossible. I had been activated to such a degree that there was no way I could return to my original human self. I was being rewired. Things were stripping off me, my attachments, some of the traits of who I was that were no longer serving me were being stripped away. And although most of the time I felt quite elated, it was also a very painful time, as I was rejected, as I said, from my family, and I was thrown out of the home. I had my passport confiscated. Didn't have access to my money. I had,
How did all of these things happen, though? I mean, how is it that you could be thrown out of the home and not have access to your passport, and what specific behaviors happened, or I tend to think of it that is not behaviors, it's just the collision of frequencies.
I think you're right. I think the frequency that I came back with, the amount that I exploded into cosmic consciousness, I think exploded the rest of the family into complete fear and in the other direction. And I was just terribly misunderstood. And, you know, I could even forgive them and understand why they were behaving that way. And I really was just getting downloads that this was just something that they couldn't understand, and that the cultures that really could understand it were probably, you know, that wasn't where I came from. So this was just such a profound experience that no one knew how to support me. They thought that I was, I mean, my sisters said, you're hiding behind spirituality for very bad behavior. So it was very judged that I was actually, you know, not conforming with, you know, my traditional way of being, and that was seen as not acceptable. So I ended up seeing a psychologist at the request of my husband at the time, and he sort of calmed the family down. He did have an understanding of spiritual awakening, and I ended up he got my passport back, got access to some money, and I ended up returning to India for 6 weeks and sitting in that village to try and actually integrate what had happened to me and to really understand the process and to really start grounding what was going on, because I was high. I was definitely high. It was like the world that I came from and my family were all behind a glass pane, and I couldn't really communicate with them, particularly when they were so judgmental. I couldn't even explain what was actually happening to me. And so...
Do you think that, do you have the feeling that it was something beyond a Kundalini experience?
Look,
is it part of a Kundalini experience?
I'd say it's part of a Kundalini experience. I think that's what it was. I think it needed to be so abrupt to actually ensure that I was ejected out, because had it been sort of mild, I think I would have been caught back in and settled back into the world that I came from and dismiss it as some sort of you know, little happening. But it was so profound that it actually sent shockwaves through everybody, that I think that I was just, you know, it was to really eject me abruptly out of it. And also the rewiring process, you know, to really detach from everything. I became, I actually, although it was distressing at times because of what was going on to me, I became very peaceful and very settled and very connected to something bigger than me. And very much, well, this was how things were supposed to unfold for me, for some extraordinary reason, starting from the death of my son. You know, this is where I found myself. And I thought, well, this was obviously the path that I had somehow signed up for or chosen. And I understand that very 3D successful academic type of person that I was has stood me in good stead to actually allow me to integrate what's happened and to be able to express it with some form of, I guess, clarity, and also, what's the word, where, you know, it gives it some validity, perhaps. I don't know. Although many people, you know, still don't understand it. But I think that there's something about me relaying this story and saying this happened to me. I knew nothing of this until the death of my son. I'm not making this up. I wouldn't have walked away from that existence that I had unless something profound had happened. And it did.
Right.
Yeah. So, you know, I spent that time in India and then came back and then really started to ground and integrate a lot of my experience. And I won back the sort of connection to my children, and I ended up starting to look after them, you know, 50% of the time, which I still do. So my children are aged 16, 14, 11 and 7. And they have a very different existence when they come and spend time with me. It's very much a peaceful, calm, you know, connected type of existence, as opposed to racing off to, you know, numerous adventures and holidays and so forth that my husband can provide. And so they're getting a taste of two worlds. It may not be what everybody ideally wanted, was this family separation, but somehow that's just how it has happened. And it has allowed me then to continue to do the work that I need to do, because I'm only parenting 50% of the time. So I get time to study, I get time to, you know, research, explore, listen to people like you and other, you know, other people that are presenting this information, and to upgrade and work on myself, to clean off the things that are happening to me, and to be able to heal my clients, my patients, which is becoming incredible. The more I you know, embody frequencies from these higher dimensions, the more my work is transforming, and it is becoming, I mean, it is unbelievable. If I had met myself, if the former me had met myself now, I wouldn't have been able to understand what was going on. It is extraordinary what is happening to me. So, again, beautiful to connect with you, because I feel like I'm speaking to somebody who understands the realms that I've been in, and some of the experiences that I've had, and the understandings that I have that I've got.
Right. We were saying that well, we've actually, you and I have actually been through some of the same passageways, including being in the same family court building in Melbourne, a couple of decades apart, but essentially in the same kind of archetypal situation. Now, you really have now opened up to the whole multidimensional reality, and bringing with you, kind of, as I understand it, being a vessel to, but also in communication with some very advanced interdimensional energies that have not been on the planet for a long time, that I found very interesting, because they're congruent with just that, with that body of knowledge that for me was the key to understanding the Ascension Hypothesis.
Sure.
And that is the whole Yuga system, which I think that was the key to understanding how the Ascension is structured through these blocks of 25,800 years, and you have so many of them, and you go from one Yuga to the next until you have a quantum leap, which we're about to do.
Yeah.
From the Kali Yuga to the Satya Yuga. But you have some very interesting connections, because you're a healer and you chose a healing profession. And could you, and I don't want to get ahead of your story, so could you sort of bring us through your journey as a multidimensional healer here?
Sure. So after this big injection into cosmic consciousness, where I, you know, really had to work hard to ground it and actually sort of navigate my the new 3D existence, I continued to work at the place that I had that I'd started to work a few years after William had died, and that was a centre of sort of holistic healing. And so I continued to do my work there, but I noticed that my healing practice was transforming dramatically, and that I was actually being guided to perform and to do different things for my patients to actually help them heal. And I started to embody more and more frequencies. And at that point in time, I wasn't entirely sure where they were coming from, but I knew it was somehow connected to this great being that had activated me in the temple. And then I started to, I was downloading frequencies through my voice, and I noticed that I could speak some sort of light language that would activate people and clean off some of their programming. And then I just got more and more knowing about what I was supposed to do. And then I started doing guided sort of meditations and activations, where I knew I was meant to be working on the DNA particularly and cleaning off where our DNA had been manipulated in, and, the things that had been done to us as humans to keep us really, I guess, enslaved within this matrix that was not necessarily serving us for where we need to be moving to for this ascension. And I saw sort of family lineage programs. I saw our own programming that we were carrying from our own incarnations, either on this planet or off-world incarnations, where we were carrying programs and vows and contracts that were not serving us, and they needed to be cleaned off and cleared. And so the karma and the trauma that we've experienced. And then I realized we needed to retrieve aspects of souls that seemed to have been fragmented off during these incarnations that we've had, where we'd been so traumatized. And I understood then that we were really being bombarded by artificial intelligence that was actually implanting us or tagging us or putting in receivers, and the nanotechnology that was coming in that was actually blocking, the DNA and the ability for the DNA to be activated. My understanding was that we were getting greater photonic light packages coming in naturally at this time on the planet that were here to wake up what science calls junk DNA, but it's really the dormant DNA that needs to be activated for our gifts and abilities to help us to ascend. And that this artificial intelligence was coming in to also hammer us and to prevent that from happening. And so I then realized I was given techniques to start clearing that off, the cells, the emotional body, the energetic body, the physical body, the mind, where we've been interfered with and continuously bombarded. I mean, the electromagnetic frequencies that are coming in that are bombarding us, the implants, as I said, the nanotechnology that seems to implant itself in various locations, and all of that needs to be cleaned off. And then really I started to realize I needed to bring in elements of the DNA that had been manipulated and removed, and those components would come in and actually start activating other parts. So there was strands of DNA that needed to be reincorporated. So I was just continually sort of upgraded. I was cleaning myself off with my programming and then embodying more of these frequencies and then getting more knowings and understandings, and beautifully started attracting patients that would activate very quickly and would then act as feedback loops to tell me what was going on, what they were perceiving. I don't see a lot, I feel a lot, and I have knowings, but I had patients that were actually seeing, and they would sit in the chair, I'd do the cleaning work on them, open up their third eyes, and then they would report what they were seeing. And interestingly, I started to go through holographic transformation in front of the patients. As I brought in these frequencies, I would actually become sort of holographic, and essences of past incarnations of me, or associations or things that I had used or been with in the past in my obviously healing capacity in past incarnations were coming through, and they were seeing it. So I'd have like a 20-year-old sitting there saying, oh, wow, you're an Egyptian. Oh, hang on, you've just changed to a Native American. There's a feather in your hair. You've got long, dark hair. Oh, wow, you're a bear. You've become a snake. And this was happening to a number of my patients, not just one, but a number of them were waking up after a process and sitting in the chair saying, oh my gosh, you've completely transformed. Sometimes it would just be to one being, others it would be like a multiple number of beings would be coming and revealing themselves. And then it started to become alien, galactic beings. And so I'd be sitting in the chair and they'd describe a blue being that was coming in, and different descriptions that they would see of what I looked like in this, galactic realm of who I had been or what that I was associated with. And then I got feedback from people saying, I was starting to feel this was Blue Ray. I was going, it's Blue Ray Founder race. This is a race that of galactic beings that have a very high frequency that haven't been able to get back on the planet, and that they were using me as a vessel, and that I was embodying their frequencies and bringing that onto the planet to actually help with the ascension process and with the shift. And I recognized that these Blue Ray beings had been present in ancient, India, and they were part of the Hindu religion, and it was all about the Vedic and the Sanskrit texts, and the Sanskrit mantras were aspects probably of their light language and elements of what they'd left behind, and certainly the temples that had been built in those times. So it was starting to sort of tie in with my experience that I'd had in India and my connection through the mysticism there. So, I mean, all of this was just happening, and quite extraordinary what was going on for me, both, personally, and then what I was able to do for people. So quite incredible. So, yeah.
Yeah. And so, in a way, and you also mentioned that there was a connection, or there may have been a connection between where you were in India and this race. Could you go in for that?
Well, I think that this great being that was buried in this temple in Ganeshpuri, Bhagwan Nityananda, I think he was from this Blue Ray Founder race, and I believe that he was an incarnation of the Blue Ray race, and he was performing, miracles in his time in the late 1800s into the early mid 1900s, and he was really a great being that was performing miracles and healings on people, and a whole village actually set up around him. And then I believe that I then soon sort of recognized, after this zap that had happened on my head, I suddenly realized this being was still present, but in a different dimension. And then I sort of connected that he was part of this Blue Ray Founder race, which I think are very deeply connected through India and through the Hindu religion, and I suspect possibly in Egypt as well. So, again, I feel like I'm embodying some of those frequencies. I've even been told by patients that are observing me, sometimes I take on the appearance of that great being in his human form when he was here on the planet. So aspects of him must be coming through me, when the frequencies go up and I become this sort of holographic representation. And also other great beings. There's a woman, Anandamaya Ma, a female realized being in India, and I've been known to have aspects of her come through me. So there is this Indian connection, this understanding that it's galactic, that those gods that the Hindus or worship were actually galactic off-world beings who were there in India at the time helping with the civilization. And then I think there's been a quarantine and they haven't been allowed back on the planet until now. As things are shifting, the Earth's frequencies going up, the veil's lifting, more portals are being open, and they're using that to bring in these frequencies through me and probably, quite possibly, others, to do this type of work, this healing work. And, it's quite phenomenal. And I must, talk to you too about some of the things that they're doing to me personally to help me with what needs to be done. I'm, working with some of these other patients of mine that actually visualize as we go up in frequency and we're almost bilocating, these beings will come in and start performing types of operations on me, if you like, where they will, use technology to do blood filtration. And I was explaining to you before, this blood filtration took place with this friend of mine who was observing everything. She started to become breathless as they were doing blood filtration on us in a different dimension. And she said she became breathless and she could see, and she said the beings then put on a mask for her so she could actually start getting some oxygen. And I was very confused because I'm going, we're human, we're sitting here in our human body, we're doing this off-world work in another dimension. It can't be making you breathless. And she's going, it is. We then came down off that dimension, and sure enough, she was peripherally cyanosed. Now, I'm a doctor. I've seen that before in patients that have been hypoxic with lung disease. She was not getting enough oxygen. She had blue periphery and blue mouth. And then we quickly got told that we were being shown that what was being done to us in these different dimensions was immediately being transmitted into our physicality and upgrading our physicality. And although she felt, breathless, they were really just showing us how quickly it was coming directly into the physical body. So there were things that were happening to me with feedback loops from these patients or friends or whatever that could see what was happening, and then we could put the pieces of the puzzle together to say, this work is really being done. It is taking place in different dimensions and immediately coming in and cleaning up the physicality.
Right. These are the thoughts that came to my mind as you were sharing that.
Yep.
And one of the realizations that that has come about over these last months of studying the Ascension Hypothesis intensively, and I use the word hypothesis for those in our audience that have science minds, so that we're saying there's an Ascension hypothesis, and you can say that it's a scientific hypothesis, so we'll go out and we'll search for evidence that the Earth is in fact moving from a third time-space density, what we can call duality consciousness, which is I win, you lose, over to a fifth density, which is more unity consciousness, love-based.
Yeah.
And that's a general hypothesis, and there are also evidentiary, databases that one can bring to support that. Now, one area, and I've got a whole bunch of books up here written by colleagues that you and I both know that show that, number one, the ethical extraterrestrials say that they're here, quote, to support the ascension. The hybrids, these are human extraterrestrial hybrids, are here to support the ascension. And there are books by a colleague of mine called Meet the Hybrids.
Sure, yeah.
Barbara Lamb and Miguel Mendoza, and you can get transcripts and look at what the hybrids are saying. And suddenly it struck me, and of course, we haven't had the opportunity and the privilege yet to read Mary Rodwell's chapter in the New Humans on You. And so you must be a new category of something that is being created to assist in the ascension. Now, hybrids have a name, and so I was saying, gee, there's this new name for you're a something, but I couldn't, and it's like a quantum leaper or something like that.
Yeah, I know. I've often thought of what is the appropriate terminology for what I am, and yeah, I mean, quantum leaper. That sounds about right. I mean, it's just somebody who abruptly got an activation of that divine DNA template, and then managing to embody these frequencies.
Well, I'm just trying to think. You see, this is, and again, we're really having a conversation. This is not a normal interview, or it's kind of like, well, I'm trying to find out some stuff, and one word that I've been looking at instead of ascension is inscension, because all of these dimensions paradoxically are not up there. They're kind of
sure.
here, or there, because they're all non-local.
Sure.
Now, gee, you've ascended.
Well,
Are,
I've
are,
still
are
got
you,
some work to do,
you know,
but I'm
are,
certainly.
no, but I mean, is there part of your structure which is now kind of permanently opened and fixed in, say, a 5D reality, so that yourself, as opposed to other people, so that the Blue Ray Foundation race
Yeah.
can come, and they know that they have access now. They
Yeah.
have an MD
Mm-hmm.
who's a healer and who's now been briefed, and who is, ascended up from the, let's see, we have 7 billion, and they're somewhere between third and fourth density, and 3.0 up to 3.999. But you seem to be in some area up there, or do you go into a special trance, or are you fixed in another dimension, or
I'm
tell us where
certainly.
you are.
Yeah, I'm certainly not fixed in that dimension, but I can very, very quickly get there. So I will immediately, I can say, look, let's go up, let's go up into that higher frequency. Let's bring in some assistance. Let me connect more deeply to the earth and get support. And I can very quickly get into that. It's not a trance. It's just a feeling of not being 3D. It's just an expanded feeling. I did some work on you before we started the interview, and I think you have an understanding of that. It just feels expanded and light. There's less, anxiety, fear, worry start to just sort of melt away. However, if I'm being pushed around in my 3D existence, I certainly, still suffer with some of the things that are playing out, but I probably more quickly can transform it. And I'm learning to sort of stay away from things that perhaps are not in my highest interest, because I think that there are energies and setups and things that are not actually, here to support me. I certainly feel like there are things that are trying to take me away from what I'm supposed to be doing. I'm not paranoid, but I certainly I'm becoming more discerning, I would say, in and where I go and what I say and what I'm doing.
Yeah. Now, in terms of developing your life plan and your kind of strategic plan, if that's a correct word, I don't know, your plan, and because you are now assisting the Ascension.
Yeah.
And I know that that's a conscious decision that I made over the last number of months when I had a breakthrough.
Yeah.
And there was a certain amount of give and take, and rolling with the punches. Let you get there for free. On the way there.
Yeah.
But I'm trying to figure out. That's why we're here, is because there's this event that's about to happen that's huge. It happens in terms of the hypothesis. We'll hypothesize that we've gone through 3 yugas, each of which are approximately 25,920 years. And there's some scholars that say, the Kali Yuga is going to end and the portal's going to open around 2025, and then and that 1,000-year period, we can squeeze that down. There's all this stuff if you want to get into the nitty-gritty of it. But I mean, all of a sudden it's like I discovered something that was always there, and it was the reason why we incarnated now and why everybody's here. It's because of the Ascension. And yet if you go out and talk about the ascension, man, they'll throw stones at you. A whole
Sure.
raft of people say that you're promoting a false religion when it's the
Sure.
biggest scientific fact around.
Sure.
Now, are you being guided from the other dimension? Does it come from your soul? Is it a combination of everything?
It's a combination of everything, and I think that what you say about the yugas is correct in my understanding, and I think that it's going to be a progressive transformation. There may be some big steps along the way, but I think that we're sort of gradually getting there from probably started 212, but it's certainly hotting up to 16, 217, I think is going to be very interesting. And then there will be this transition, but we'll probably see a lot of chaos and people, really floundering. And I would suggest that that's where my role will be as some sort of guide, and yours as guidance for this transition, because it is going to happen. But I think, like you and me, you have to go through some fairly painful extractions out of your previous existence to actually get on board with what's happening. And people will need to get on board, because otherwise there will just be ongoing suffering. So I think that we're here to assist. I think this is happening to us. Our awareness is opening up at the sort of leading edge of what is going to take place. But, and it's interesting because we talk about, I started off with this was sort of a spiritual thing that happened to me after William died, but it's very much a science for me now. I see this as a science. This is, embodiment of what is actually scientifically going on the planet. And it just so happens that it incorporates the spiritual side of us, which is the side of us that actually awakens and gets us out of this dimension. So, this is science, this is spirituality, this is ascension.
Yeah. Could you share with us some of the scientific guide, kind of markers that you see, or maybe some of the different stages of development that you've seen in yourself in your awakening, say, that may be useful to
Yeah, look, I think that really the understanding initially that pretty much everything that I understood in the 3D world needed to be reevaluated. And that's across the board in every sort of area of life, needed to be sort of reevaluated, because some of the belief systems and obviously some of the practices, involved in, with other institutes. I'm not just talking about the medical profession or the pharmaceutical industry or the legal profession, but it's, it's the education, it's sort of waking up to how some of these things are not in our highest interests. And sort of learning how we're going to navigate through those as they still stay in the same structure that they are today. But what would I say? Look, I think that I'm just sort of becoming more aware that the science that we understood and that we've been taught is not the highest science. That there's a lot going on there that hasn't actually been discussed or brought forward. The same with history. The same with archaeology. We've really been blinded to what's actually going on, and it's as we awaken and get sort of more information and more knowings and more understandings come in, that you actually realize that what we know has been such a small little box, and what we're actually capable of and what's actually been going on is way beyond that. But I see it sort of as a transition, and I see people waking up in different areas of their life, and then it actually starts sort of being incorporated in a broader sense. But I guess people, it's a very people will be having very personal journeys of how this will take place, I think.
So now, before you were a family physician, a family practitioner, a GP.
Yeah.
And now it's evolved, as I understand it, you're now a healer.
Yeah.
And could you describe that? How are you? Do you see clients, or is this something personal, or how how does that
Yeah, no,
evolve?
I still see clients. So I do one-on-one work with people who book in, and look, I get people that have basically tried conventional forms of therapy or medicine and actually had no relief from what's been going on in their lives. I mean, I had a 20-year-old girl recently who'd been to the psychiatrist for 2 years and had been diagnosed with depression and been put on antidepressants, and then told if they don't work, then it must be bipolar and they'll be trying a different medication. And she was just feeling there was something not right about any of this. And she came to see me, and within one session, she looks at me and she said, it's like you've pulled back the curtains and turned on the light. And then the next week, she stopped her medication. And then she saw me weekly for probably, 4 to 6 weeks, and just said, it's completely transformed who I am. I feel empowered. I sort of understand what's going on. And I think what's interesting is some people are feeling a sense of depression as they're actually starting to awaken. I think it is one of the symptoms. And if we go off to the doctor, we get put on an antidepressant, which makes us step back in line and go back to sleep. Whereas when we actually go deeper into what's going on and activate and clean off some of the programming that's not serving us, then as this girl says, the lights went on and the curtains were drawn back. And, my receptionist reports the patients come in looking completely different to how they leave the room. This energy comes into them and starts embodying in them and switching on that's been suppressed in them for years. And it starts to light up, and I see a light come on behind their eyes, and they feel better and they start to transform. And what's interesting is it comes off in blocks, some of the programming. So some of the vows and contracts and things that we've been, run by from our previous incarnations or from our family lineage or our experiences throughout this lifetime. What I'm finding is that I'll clear off a certain emotional program or behavior, and then blocks will come off. So I had one guy who was struggling in his relationship, and I did some work on that. And he came back the next day and said, or the next week, and said how amazing he felt. And not only did he feel different towards his whole relationship, but he was no longer scared of heights. He said, just out of the blue, he was no longer scared of heights. And you're just going, okay, so there's obviously sort of fear and programming all caught up. And once I sort of shifted one block of it off, there were other things that were sort of unfolding for him. So it doesn't have to be going through every little thing. We can clean off
Right.
quite a lot, quite effectively.
Yeah. Now, and I'm asking questions that are maybe intrusive. So if you don't want to answer them, just tell me. So are you still a licensed MD?
I am, and I'm still keeping that up. I've done, I continue to do my professional development points. I do them in the area of sort of counselling and psychology.
Yeah.
And I do because I am performing a form of counselling. I am literally counselling people. It may not be in the way that other, physicians are doing, but it's actually effective. The patients are getting great relief and very quickly. And, I have children with eating disorders, and they've been seeing psychologists for 2 years, 2 sessions, they're feeling completely different. I've got children that are having school refusal, and I'm going in and finding that they've had past life experiences where they were burnt in a school building, and that was actually the terror of actually going into school, and then that would be cleared off. Or children that are awake and feeling that they don't fit in because they've already got some of their DNA activated, some of these new children that are coming on the planet that Mary Rodwell talks about. And if I just sit with them in the frequencies, they actually get a sense of comfort and support, and they'll return to school. So I feel like I'm doing the most effective healing work that I've ever done in my whole medical career. So I feel very sort of, ethical and validated because the patients are walking out with an improvement, and I'm not doing any harm.
This is extraordinary. So, and so are they coming to see you as an MD or as a healer or as both?
As both. As both.
Both.
But I've made it quite clear I no longer prescribe medications.
Oh, I see.
And I no longer practice normal medical procedures.
Okay, procedure.
And so if they want to do that, then they need to, you know, and they can maintain their relationship with their normal doctor.
Oh, I see.
That's fine. So I just say that that's not an area that I've been involved with now for many years, and I'm no longer interested.
Yeah.
And, you know, so I just don't practice that because, and again, it wouldn't work with what I'm doing.
Yeah,
I'm trying to get people off medications, not on them.
Yeah. So actually, you are embodying the new healthcare, the new kind of the new interdimensional ET healthcare, which is beyond energy medicine. I mean, it's a form of energy medicine, but it's beyond that. It's more. It's more 5D. It's you know, going into the genome level, right? Quantum genome level.
And Alfred, sorry to interrupt, but what was interesting is when I was in the deep grief that I've faced with the death of my son, I did go to see a counsellor and a psychologist, and they couldn't help me. There was nothing they could do for me, aside from offer me medications, sleeping tablets, and so forth. And so that was part of the awakening too, that here we have a system that actually could not help me. I was passing the box of tissues to the psychologist in my session. And I was going, well, here we go. You know, who's here to help me? So, you know, it was really the off-world beings that were here to help me. But then what was interesting is I realized we've got so much obesity. We have so much diabetes. You know, we're not on top of cancer. We're you know, youth suicide, you know, the depression. And I realized that the type of medicine that I was practicing is not really making great headways in a lot of these areas. And that a lot of it was to do with our disconnect from our soul and that we really are. So the more I can light that up and the more I can connect people back to that by peeling off their fear-based programs that prevent that from happening, they're actually embodying then their own medicine, their own well-being, their own health. And it is transforming illness and disease.
Yeah. Now, do you, aside from having individual sessions and clients, do you hold teaching classes and things like that, or?
I don't. I've been so involved in my own process and then legally extracting myself from my ex-husband and so forth, which hasn't been terribly pleasant. I feel like I'm about to launch into that. I think 2017, Maree's book will be, you know, published. And I feel like I've got work to do. I feel like I've got talks to give. I feel like there's workshops to be done. I feel like there's even group cleaning. I feel like I can actually clean off a room of people of a lot of the programming or the, you know, some of the artificial intelligence that we're being bombarded with. So I feel like there's big work coming for me, and I feel like I've stabilized enough, I've grounded enough, I've got enough information, and I've had enough embodiment of these frequencies to be able to do that now. So I feel like there's sort of work ahead for me, and, you know, I'm ready. I'm ready to do what I need to do and be guided.
Yeah, and I'm just asking because I don't know. Do you have a presence on the web? I mean, do you have a web presence, or I just don't know.
I actually don't, but I probably will get one fairly soon. I, you know, really just get referrals. If they're not local, I'll do Skype work with people, and I just get that through my email address. And certainly I've been getting contacts through Maree Rodwell. And I must say the connection with Maree Rodwell has been extremely interesting. I went to one of her lectures in January of this year, and when I was listening to her talk, I realized, wow, she's bringing in some of the highest information, and she had an understanding that the spiritual dimensions were actually galactic and multidimensional beings and different frequencies, and I sort of connected a lot of the dots there, and I went up and had a very brief conversation with her, and for some reason gave her my card. And then it was in about July or August, she just contacted me out of the blue and said, I was told by, my higher self that I needed to contact you. What is it that you're up to? And I said, well, Maree, guess what's been happening to me? And then we got into this great conversation, and then she wrote this chapter on me. But I think it's very interesting, Alfred, because it points out that a lot of this work and connection is being done in the other realms to connect us and bring us to what it is we're supposed to be doing. So Maree contacts me. This will be somehow, my work will be able to be presented to people, and I'll be able to help people in a wider sense. And even my connection to you, it was like, wow, we needed to connect. We had things to discuss. We have things to do. And it's really not with a great effort that we into the flow of what's meant to be happening for us.
And we have a lot of pre-existing connections and pre-existing experiences that are decades apart, but we went through the same, I would call it spiritual emergence experiences in the same city, Melbourne, Australia. It just happens to be 20 years apart or whatever.
Well, there is no time. There is no time. We were doing it together.
Something like that. So many questions. So you really can't let's just use the term online. So you really began to come online in 2008. Mm-hmm. Have your connections talked to you at all about, let's say that was 2008, have they talked to you about timing or, kind of a general idea of the bigger picture?
Well, the bigger picture, from a personal point of view, the timing has been, I can see the timing. It was 2008 that William died. I started the awakening, the abrupt, as you say, spiritual emergence in 2014, getting me very prepared and embodying more of these frequencies for this transition that's really rapidly increasing globally from sort of, 216, 217. I'm sort of going to be prepared for whatever it is they're expecting me to do. So I feel like the timing of my awakening has been actually timed with what's going on globally. And I feel that's happening for lots of people. We're all lighting up and connecting globally, across the planet. We're finding connections with people that are ascending at the same sort of rate and starting to want to do more for humanity. What else can I be doing? How else can I be serving? How else can I be helping this ascension? And I think it has been timed that we're all being activated at, this, what I would say the leading edge is being activated at the same time to get on with the job, to really, I call it sort of almost bush bashing, making that path, clearing that path for the rest of the people to follow along behind, and for us to put our hands behind and say, come on, come with us. This is the path forward.
I'm just wondering whether 2017 is kind of a frame in the time space hologram or whatever, where there's a major division in the realities. And it's clear that it's clear that you make decisions as to whether you want to continue in a 3D hologram of war, disease, crime, and poverty. There's plenty of that, and it looks like they're budgeting for that, and they've got a lot of super hawks who know how to make that happen. Right? It looks like they're really gearing up for that one. And there's not much that you can do but kind of step back and watch it burn, right? What can you do? And yet at the same time, the portals are really opening up toward toward the Satya Yuga, which is the golden age.
Yeah.
And uh, and so that's what's going to start happening in 2017. Is that kind of separation of realities that everybody has been talking about it. I mean, I know that I was it's the 80s. Is what I'm saying resonating?
Absolutely. I feel that definitely. And I feel like, those of us that are awakening at this time are really here to embody frequencies, shine lights, and start, doing the job just by being us and being guided to help with this ascension and the awakening process. But there are going to be masses of people that just aren't going to get this. And whether, I don't know how that's going to look, but we can sense it now. I mean, it's already starting. We're really, so many people from my former life can't understand a word I'm saying.
Yeah, it's as though we're like not visible.
Totally.
We kind of died and went to heaven or something.
Totally. And then when we do dip back down into it, it's too painful to stay there for too long.
Yeah.
So we don't want to even be part of it anyway. And then we make these divine connections, as I said, across the globe of like-minded people and say, okay, we've got a job to do. So let's get on with it.
Yeah.
And hope that people hear, feel, and see us and start waking up. And don't forget, we have got these photonic light packages coming in and activating people's DNA. We've got the children that Mary Rodwell talks about. The children are being, activated, are coming in aware already with skills and abilities, knowing that they're connected with off-world beings and getting downloaded with astrophysics and ways to purify water and how to, create free energy. I mean, her book is fascinating, and her book is going to be a catalyst for this shift. It really is extraordinary reading. And so her work, and what I see is us, the generation that I'm in, is to hold open these portals and these frequencies and support these children so they don't get taken off and diagnosed as ADHD, or they don't get taken down into the underground schooling to be working for the not so benevolent side. So we hold frequencies and support them and say, we hear you, we understand, we know, and we start listening to them and coaching them rather than teaching them, because they will be the ones that have the information for us. They're coming with information for us for this ascension, and there needs to be enough of us as adults that are here to actually keep them, safe in a way to actually, get on with the job that they're here to do. So I see that as a big part as well.
Yeah, it's I just want to say this without, I know it'll change it's not going to change the frequencies. We're just going to say it. But you mentioned children, and in the 3D world, that is there are keepers of the 3D world, and they're kind of 6-dimensional negatives or something like that.
Yeah.
And so I'll use the word pedophilia, but that's their use for children.
Totally.
And so that's how your reptilian barrister, does it, and the legal system.
Yeah, I get it. I'm well aware of
all those children. So that's a great challenge.
Look, it is. And again, we just have to hope that enough people awaken and enough, of the frequency gets embedded onto the planet, and we become these conduits of this frequency, and things will just be shifting. And that we aren't alone doing it just in our human form. It is going on off-world with these other dimensions, supporting and helping us, and then bringing in these new kids that we do need to support. But I hear you, but it's our job, and our job is to keep pulling in the light and the frequencies and being teachers and way showers of this information.
would you say, are you in touch with your counterparts? I don't know what words to use. Daily? Is it 24/7? Is it as neat? I know that it's non-local and non-temporal, so it's a mistake to say how often, because it's that relationship is outside of time and space.
Sure.
And it's just, and talking about it is us bringing it into time and space, so it distorts it.
Sure.
Because they could be in touch all time, and then it's just when we decide to bring it into time and space and talk about it.
I think you're right. I think the latter explanation is what is going on, but it takes us to step a little bit out of our human attachment and just sort of observe a little bit and realize that it's actually going on all the time. So when we're quiet and we're not caught up in our mind, or we're not running a fear-based program, it is there all the time. And I will notice I'll go to bed at night and I will feel them upgrading me. I can feel things being done throughout my physicality, in my back, in different places. I've noticed I've changed physically. Things are going on, even, overnight when I'm not aware. And I think that this connection is there all the time, but it's just a matter of me, clicking into it and stepping back a little bit, rather than being so focused on what's going on in 3D. And then I'm immediately connected. And that connection is very, very quick. I can just say, wow, let's feel who I really am in the multidimensional aspects of me, and boom, it's there. So it's very handy. It's beautiful. And I can do it with you. And when we're speaking, we can start to feel it. We're bringing it in. We're starting to connect to those higher frequencies by having these conversations.
Yeah. And just to share with you, I had my own kind of, what did you call it? A beam to the head? What was it?
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, my own kind of awakening like that happened in February of 1973, and I had an interaction with an interdimensional being.
Yeah.
And it was quite profound. And now that I think of it, it was like I had a non-local and non-temporal experience. And it's like, okay, and so I've been there non-locally and non-temporally since 1973. And then I made a decision to stay here as Alfred, but I'm really up there. And this is where I was in 1973. Does that make sense? I mean, I'm really in both.
Yeah, it makes great sense, and I think that choice of I think we need to keep mindful of the choice to actually play as the humans that we are, but continuously remember that we are these multidimensional aspects and connected to these greater frequencies that are beyond this matrix, because that's what is so necessary for the planet, so healing for ourselves as individuals, but also serving humanity. So, I love that. But yes, we obviously did choose to still stay here in our human physicality. And that's part of our mission as conduits of this frequency. These off-world beings can't get some of these frequencies onto the planet without using us as vessels.
So I'm wondering, this is just thinking out loud, is that as we travel through time, if the ascension, quote, end of quote, is not really a collective multidimensional experience of that sort, where both the planet and the collective of humans that are ready to awaken will have a collective aha experience, where they will at one moment have this experience and get cemented. Because if you go into the research, it talks about these brilliant flashes of energy cosmic, brilliant flashes of energy. The sun explodes. There's this cosmic energy that explodes. It's not like a silent passage through a portal. It's like a portal. And so I'm just wondering that if it's like an analog of your flash on the head in the temple, but it happens collectively to the planet and to everybody on the planet. So everybody's going to be there all the time.
Yeah.
And we will be back, but in bodies more of light. Let's say that our bodies are more of light now.
Sure.
And as we go into that experience, whenever it does happen, apparently we can't give a fixed date because it's kind of a critical mass thing.
Yeah.
But that there's going to be a definitely like there's a crystallization.
Sure. I feel like that's true, and that is, is a great possibility. However, I think the physical, emotional, energetic body will need to transform through that process. I feel like yes, as you say, the light will come in and boom, it will awaken people, but there'll still be some work to do to clean themselves and transform into a being that can carry more light. That's just my feeling on it. That that will take some time. That yes, there could be this flash like I had, the zap on the head, but like with me, it did take some time to integrate, ground, and clean up, and be able to embody these frequencies. I don't think my physical body would have been capable of embodying these frequencies in its previous form.
Right, because over the years, there's been a tremendous amount of urban myth or mythology or theorizing or hypothesizing about what the ascension process is.
Yeah.
And which is great because, we're all kind of spiritual scientists in a way. Yeah. And the more accurately we get it, the more we can accelerate it.
Sure.
So that is why I think it's important. And also, this is the process of building a conscious awakening and a conscious critical mass. I mean, a conscious awakening to the ascension process.
Sure.
That we're just not here as consumers, that we're just not here as breeders, or we're just not here as intellectuals or careerists.
Yes.
Or warriors or whatever. Yeah. You're in, where that there's an overarching at this time in cosmic history.
Yes.
That we're here at a very special time. It's kind of graduation time.
Absolutely. And I agree with you, and I feel that, I see that, and bring it on. Yeah. And I think it's happening. It is happening. It's just how and when and what it exactly looks like, we don't know. But certainly by these conversations, we're adding to it. I think we are accelerating it, and I think we are bringing pieces of the puzzle. We all need to bring our information together to have a greater understanding of what's happening.
Yeah. Also, I think I've said this when I encountered tremendous. I didn't think it was going to be the case, but when I kind of grokked that all the higher order extraterrestrials and the hybrids were here for the ascension, and that's what was really happening. It took me a while.
Yeah.
Gee, I've been in exopolitics 40 years, and you mean that's what it was really about?
I know, yeah. I love it. Yeah. So we're waking up to different aspects of it by meeting more and more people that are experiencing it.
Yeah.
And, you know, fantastic.
Yeah, and so it just makes me wonder about the resistance to disclosure. Is that like a conspiracy by the dark, or is it that, I mean, are they in resistance to there's some theories that, you know, six dimension negative souls, they get their brownie points by the more souls that they can keep from ascending.
Sure.
You know, they get their brownie points from that.
Yeah, sure.
Or is it that they just haven't fully awoken yet? Because is the nature of the spiritual battle who can get the most souls either for ascension or away from ascension? Is that it?
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah.
that the things before in the kind of Abrahamic religions, you know, thing, they would say, well, let's see how many souls we can save, or the devil's going to get your soul. And now, if you're in the ascension modality, you say, well, are the dark forces going to, you know, get them for 3D, or are they going to ascend? But it's the same mechanics. It's just a different lens.
Yeah. Look,
you know what I'm saying?
Yeah. Look, you know, I question, I don't know, why haven't we had more disclosure? I don't know. I think that it's a combination of things. I think that first thing that the first way that you described it, that there is this other realm that's trying to prevent it from happening. You know, I think that's absolutely happening. But I also see that we have humanity at a level that perhaps, you know, need to awaken slightly more to be able to take this information on. Maybe it's a combination of things, but it's, you know, I feel it's coming. It is coming, and you know, it's being gradually worked through the different dimensions and down into the human, and I think it will come. It will come. I mean, there are more people that are understanding what you and I are talking about than there would have been, say, 5 years ago, or a year ago, or even 6 months ago. So it is happening, but the timing is just unknown, and the way is unknown, I believe.
Now, do you have anything written anywhere? Have you written any papers on this, or is it mainly your practice?
Look, it's mainly my practice. I haven't actually written anything, only just what's coming out in Mary Rodwell's book, which was just based on some interviews she did with me. And no, I haven't actually written anything yet. Look, I probably need to at some point. As I said, I've just sort of been managing what has been so rapidly occurring for me. But I feel there are sort of, you know, talks and workshops and things that I need to probably step up and start organising to do. But I think that will come. I think 2017 will be a big year where I step up into sort of more of what it is I'm supposed to be doing. So you know, let's see where it goes.
Wow. Present at the creation.
Yeah. Here we are.
So what would you like 2017 to be like for you?
I would like to see, look, for me, just more people being receptive to what it is that I've got to say, and how I can help them. Just that we have more people open to what it is that I am capable of doing. And you know, because I am here to serve, and I am here to help people, and I would just hope that there will be more and more that need my assistance, and that I'm able to help with this ascension process.
Right. And do you think that that's something that you can do on the air, or is that something that it's too public at this stage to do that?
No, I think I can do it on air. I think Look, I feel in a funny way it's already has been set up for me how this is going to unfold, and I don't sort of spend too much time thinking about it. It's day by day, and what presents is you know, as I said, with Maree's book coming out, she's presenting that at a conference in Byron Bay in Australia in January. I'll be going to that.
Oh, good.
So she wants me to put together a little 5-minute video of myself and some of the things that I'm doing just as part of her presentation on the chapters about me. And there are people coming out from America for that, people associated with the free organization that she's part of with Edgar, you know, the organization that was started with Edgar.
I was just in touch with Ray Hernandez.
Yeah, right.
Today, just a couple of hours ago.
Wow. Yeah. So, you know, so and that's also a group that I need to get more presence in, I think, and have more to do with. I mean, as I have said to you, I've really just started to, you know, the process has been so dramatic, you know, and for me that I've gone through personally, that I'm really only launching now as I've sort of got everything set up in my 3D existence, my new 3D existence. So I'm ready. Right. The timing's perfect. Right. Bring on 217. I've got things to say, things to do.
Good. So it was like you've gone through the Big Bang, and now the universe is going. So would you like to do a clearing for, you know, we could sit down, because the audience is non-local and non-temporal. It's listening to us now, always. Sure. So.
Okay. Well, we could do that, so we can finish off with something that just leaves us all feeling a little bit more clean, clear, connected. Beautiful.
Yeah, and so people can understand that what you're doing now is really coming from another level, and are really working with the Blue Ray Foundation base. And these are the extraterrestrial, the off-planet energies that were responsible for the Vedas, as I understand it.
Yeah.
And that makes sense because it's a yuga structure that is connected to these. As I see it. Yeah, sure.
All right. Well, let's do this. So I'll direct it, Alfred, sort of more directly at you, but the wider audience can obviously just follow along. So we'll connect our feet down to the earth. So we'll feel through the base of our feet a connection to the earth, remembering that she is evolving and her frequencies are going up. And she will send energy up through our feet and through the base of our spine and make us feel supported and connected. We'll start to become aware of the multidimensional aspects of us, which mean that we'll go up in frequency. So we start to feel ourselves as a 5th dimensional being, a 7th, going higher and higher, the 9th, higher and higher, the 12th, and beyond. So we are multidimensional with higher frequencies pouring in and around us. And in these higher frequencies, we have a greater connection to these off-world galactic benevolent beings. So we can actually call forward our galactic star being families to support us. And even in this realm, people's guides and angels will come through and just support. And I also like to call on only benevolent, high-frequency beings that are here for the greatest good for humanity and the individuals that are doing this work. We will not tolerate any negative, non-benevolent beings or any energies that are not here for our highest good. So we'll call in the Andromedeans, the Sirians, the Palladians, the Arcturians, and any benevolent off-world beings that want to assist. And I'll certainly be calling in the Blue Ray Founder race frequencies to help people with their healing process. And what I like to start with is that any parasitic thought forms that people are holding on to, any thought forms that have been implanted that are not in their highest good, or any thought forms that have been activated that are no longer serving them, thought forms that are taking them around and around in rumination of fear, anxiety, worry, all to be released now. And anything that's been implanted into the mind, any tagging, any receptors, anything that's not benevolent, any implant needs to be released now out of the mind. We'll open up our third eyes, just opening up our third eyes and clearing off any calcification or fluoride in the pineal, and just activating the third eye now. Activating the cannabinoid system, ensuring that that's up and running and is healthy, helping us, support us with any fear, trauma. Activating throughout our body. I like to come in and get into the physical body and remove any implants that have been placed there. Anything across our necks, back of our head, our navels, anywhere that we've been tagged, any receptors, any of the nanotechnology that's got in to our cells and onto the DNA needs to be cleaned and cleared off now. Particularly anything we may have inhaled into our lungs, into the bronchioles, the alveoli needs to be cleared off now. And anything in the gastrointestinal tract that we may have ingested in the way of genetically modified food, any nanotechnology that's lining the bowel to be cleaned and cleared off now. Getting into each cell, expanding with this high frequency, this light, and activating the DNA and unwinding it and getting down to the subatomic areas and actually releasing any of the DNA, the alien manipulation that's no longer serving us. Anywhere that our DNA has been manipulated that's not in our highest good for this ascension that's to take place for the individual and for humanity at large. Releasing anything there that's been manipulated. And again, I call on any of the nanotechnology on the cells at the DNA level needs to be released. And anything that's blocking the mitochondria to be released now, and activating the mitochondria in every cell so that it's functioning. And that we're getting great repair, regeneration, and rejuvenation of every cell. I'd like to bring in any beautiful golden strands of DNA that have been removed from us. And we want to activate our divine DNA template. If I bring in these golden strands and place them into every cell, we get our divine DNA template downloaded, and we also start to activate the dormant DNA for our gifts and abilities and for healing. So we activate the cells with our divine DNA template, activating the DNA and increasing our ability to tap into the mission we have here on the planet, and embodying a sense of peace, love, joy, and harmony as our natural state. Recognizing that that's who we are meant to be. And feeling deeply supported and connected. I'd like to finish up by protecting any of the work that we've done here today by ensuring that there is enough high frequency embodiment and golden light protection of any of the work that we've done today. And ensuring that people feel supported, loved, and healed. So how are you feeling there, Alfred?
You know, I feel very connected, and I feel very grounded and very safe.
Yeah.
It's remarkable.
Yeah.
I'm just wondering whether it would be okay for you if in the article that'll accompany this, we can put a contact email where people who wanted to reach you,
Sure.
yeah,
That would be great.
and yeah, because that way, you know, people who come across the interview and see they can get in touch with you,
Sure.
and you know, because people see this all over the world, and I know that right now I feel really very optimistic. I mean, you know, that this can really be done.
I know, it's good news.
Yeah.
It's good news.
Wow.
Yeah.
Well, is there anything that you'd like to share with us, or?
No, look, I think that we've covered a lot, and it's a lot for people to actually take on and digest. And, you know, it's been an absolute pleasure to be able to come here and speak with you and connect with you and feel supported and understood by you. So I thank you very much for that.
Oh, totally. And if it's not too much, I really want to thank you for taking time to come today and for reaching out to us. It's been extraordinary. And next year, once Maree Batchelor's book is out and we've read your chapter, can we ask you to come on again? Because then we've read your chapter and then we'll know a little bit more.
Sure.
We can ask you some more.
Sure. Fantastic. I would love to.
Yeah. Well, thank you very much then.
Okay, beautiful. Thank you. Bye.
Bye-bye.